So hi Bryan, it's Cavan here. I thought I'd just take a moment to re-record the actual video for you so you can have a look at the brain maps and listen to me talk at the same time. It's a little bit easier to follow sometimes than a report. So just to kind of briefly go back over how this stuff works. So the brain cap basically measures the raw brainwave activity and then it converts it into these Z-scored charts here. So basically, it's looking at your brain compared to a normative database matched for age and sex, and it says what's your brain doing that's different or outside of the norm from what we would expect in a perfect healthy brain, so to speak. So first off, it's organized into these columns here. So you have delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta activity, and these are organized from slowest to fastest brain waves. Now, delta, theta, and alpha are typically associated with things like relaxation, sleep, memory retrieval, sense of calm and ease, whereas beta and high beta activity are associated with attention, focus, problem solving, any type of brain activity that requires fast, focused thinking. The set of maps on the left here is you with your eyes open, and then the set of maps on the right is you with your eyes closed. So the first thing we'll take a look at is this top row here. So what we want to see is green. That's normal, healthy brainwave activity. Anything that's light blue to dark blue is underactive, so there's not enough of that type of brain activity. And anything that's yellow, orange, or red is progressively more excessive brainwave activity. So I mean, right off the bat, I would just want to point out that your brain actually looks very, very good, both in the eyes open and eyes closed. You can see there's a lot of green overall. So I know you're very into natural health and kind of holistic medicine, taking care of yourself, and it really shows. You have, for the most part, a very healthy, good-looking brain. A few things do jump out at me, though. First off is this lack of activity of theta and alpha here, kind of in your left frontal lobe. So again, theta and alpha are inhibiting brainwaves, so they help us to relax, they help us to calm down, and particularly in the left frontal lobe there, this may give you sort of an overly busy brain. It's usually a hallmark of people who like to research, who like to learn. The left hemisphere of their brain stays sort of very activated, and their mind is always kind of churning on things, working on things. So, it may not present as stress. For a lot of people, it presents as anxiety where their mind churns because they're just constantly thinking of things all the time. But you may find that it's a little bit harder for you to sort of quiet your mind than maybe you would like. You may not feel this at all, though. I mean, it is very mild, but it could be there. Another possibility, you can see how there's a fair bit of blue. It's concentrated to the left frontal lobe, but there's also a fair bit of blue sort of all over here and a little bit even in the delta range. This type of activity, where people are sort of generally deficient in slow wave activity, can be indicative of a few different things. Sometimes it's a lack of sensitivity to dopamine. So it's not so much that you don't have enough dopamine, it's that your dopamine receptors aren't picking up on it as well as they could. Another possibility is mitochondrial dysfunction, so your brain may just be having a hard time generating as much energy as it needs, and so it goes a little bit low voltage, which is what we're seeing there. Another possibility is a little bit of deficiency in GABA. I don't know if that sounds like you. Typically, people who are low on GABA will find alcohol is very, very attractive to them, so they drink and they feel significantly better, and they're actually higher functioning when they drink alcohol. So if you're not someone who really, really loves alcohol, I would guess probably leaning towards more maybe a little bit of mitochondrial dysfunction or dopamine insensitivity. One of the things you can ask yourself as well is, do you have dreams at night? Because you may be a little bit deficient in choline. I think we talked about this with Chris, where I suggested CDP choline. You mentioned in the message that you sent me you've been taking alpha GPC, and it's helped you, I think, have some more dreams. So that would be worth keeping up with. And when you're out of the alpha GPC, switch to the CDP choline because it's really good for helping to rebuild dopamine receptors, from what I understand, especially if you mix it with fish oil. So that'd be worth trying out and seeing how that goes for you. As well, you're taking CoQ10. You could also try ubiquinol, so it's the sort of activated form of CoQ10 where it's already been reduced. It tends to be a little bit more bioavailable, from what I understand. But yeah, just keep experimenting. Things like D-ribose as well may be helpful for you. yeah, just do some research on different mitochondrial enhancers, PQQ, things like that, and just try them out and see what works for you. But again, overall, really not bad. Typically, the kind of people I see who come looking for brainwave help look a lot worse than you do. uh, Next thing I would maybe want to point out here is this high beta activity. So again, it's only yellow, so it's really not too severe, and you can see it shows up both in the eyes open and eyes closed maps. When I see something like that, especially in a high performance person, such as yourself, usually I would think mild, kind of low grade inflammation is typically how that shows up for people. I know you do a lot of work to heal that kind of stuff. I don't know if you may have a history of some autoimmune problems and that's how you got into natural health in the first place. And again, it's not bad, but you may have just a little bit of extra inflammation. You want to try to work around as best you can. You'll probably know more about that than I do in terms of nutritional interventions you can take to work at this, but it's not too bad. If it doesn't have to do with inflammation specifically, and this is just an area of your brain that's naturally kind of overactivated, it's right over the anterior cingulate cortex there, so it may affect things like your social functioning. You might find that you have to work a little bit harder to, get to know people, or social situations can be a little bit anxiety provoking for some people with this pattern. It can also cause difficulty shifting gears, so you may be a little bit obsessive where you get stuck on something and you're just constantly thinking about it. But again, it's very mild, so if you do have those tendencies, they would be tendencies as opposed to like really obvious in your personality. If we took a look down here in the relative power, so whereas the top row absolute power is your brain waves sort of objectively measured, how much actual voltage is coming off of your head. The relative power is brainwaves measured against one another. So you can think of them almost as being like on a balance beam. As one brainwave goes up, others go down. And we're looking at how are they balanced out sort of as a whole. And again, very good overall. Not bad. There's a little bit of excess delta activity in the back of the head here. That could potentially predispose you to a little bit of depression, maybe some mild visual processing issues, but again, it's very subtle. What I would probably be more inclined to look at here is this beta activity. In the center of your head there is the motor cortex. So the motor cortex is responsible for movement and bodily sensation, things like that. When it gets a little bit overactivated like that, typically people find that they're kind of just more physically aroused than they'd like to be. They sometimes have a hard time relaxing their body, relaxing tension in their shoulders, they might clench their jaw, or they'll tend to be quite fidgety. It may also cause problems maintaining deep sleep at night. And as well, you can see this high beta is a little bit highlighted. So it's still showing the same things before up here in the anterior cingulate. It's just a little bit overactivated there. We go down here, the next thing I like to look at is these coherence charts. So coherence is communication or crosstalk between different areas of the brain. What you want to see is no lines, kind of like that there. So that's very normal, healthy coherence activity in the alpha. And again, you really don't have a whole lot going on here other than primarily this beta and high beta activity in the left temporal lobe there. And you can see it's coming off the temporal lobe and then it's attaching into the occipital lobes here. So temporal lobe hypercoherence, it really depends again on the person. A lot of times that might cause some excess irritability or tendency to be upset more easily than one would like. It might make you a little bit overly sensitive to kind of ugly sounds, like kind of nail on a chalkboard effect. Sometimes, like hearing people chew or hearing, just certain sounds will kind of really irritate or aggravate you. It causes a little bit of ringing in the ears. And because it's connected between this temporal lobe and the occipital lobe there, it may also be indicative of some kind of visual processing issue. I don't know if you ever find like your vision goes kind of blurry on you, or you ever had trouble reading for long periods of time in class, or you're sensitive to bright lights, things like that, but that might be another possibility. But for the most part, it's not too bad. When you close your eyes, the delta kind of picks up a little bit here in the coherence. That could potentially make you a little bit ruminative, maybe prone to some depression, or at least mildly depressive thinking, but again, it's really not too bad. Phase lag is the speed of communication between different areas of the brain. So yours is primarily blue, and you can see it's kind of overall through the head here. That's a very common thing I'll see again with high-performing people, where their brain is just almost just a little bit overclocked, I guess you could say. So it's just running a little bit too fast, it's firing information back and forth a little bit too quickly. So that may probably give you the experience of just having like an overly busy mind. And it may not be pathologically overly busy, but you might find, like you're always thinking about stuff, you're kind of always on the go, you've always got something churning in your head. But again, really not super bad. The next thing I wanted to show you are these charts here. So these are Loretta, what they call coherence charts. So Loretta EEG takes the data from the surface maps and it goes a little bit deeper. It takes a look at Brodmann areas in the brain. So if you want to just Google Brodmann areas, you'll get a picture of sort of a chart of the brain and what all those areas mixed up look like. But essentially it allows us to get almost like fMRI quality look at how different individual areas of the brain are connecting with one another. So I'll just go through these briefly. There's a few things I was able to pick out. Number one, so with this chart here, the top area is the Brodmann area in question, left or right side of the brain. Green is normal, healthy connectivity. That's what you want to see. Blue is a bit of a disconnection, and red is a hyperconnection. You have the brainwave speeds here, delta, theta, alpha 1, alpha 2, all the way up to high beta along the bottom there. And then the y-axis is the areas of the brain that this top area here could be potentially connected or disconnected from. When I look at these charts, Brodmann area 1, 2, 3, and 4 again make up the motor cortex of the brain. And if you remember earlier, that was one of the things I said was a little bit overactive in your brain, is the motor cortex. So when I see this pattern, there's always a few things I think. Again, potentially you might be a little bit deficient in dopamine or acetylcholine. Maybe a little bit deficient in dopamine or acetylcholine, so again, that might be worth trying out. The other thing it potentially points to is, again, energy deficiency in the brain. I see this pattern in a lot of people, and particularly even myself as well, where there's some sort of mitochondrial or neurotransmitter dysfunction that's leaving the brain sort of a little bit starved for energy or tired, and so it locks up in this motor cortex here. Again, this pattern will typically give you a little bit of feeling of excessive physical agitation. So you'll have kind of a sense of anxiety, but it won't be about anything in particular. You'll just be sort of physically tense, have a hard time sitting still, relaxing. Or the other possibility is it might make you overly chill, so you'll actually have a hard time like getting up and moving and going around. It depends on the person. But to me, this most likely probably has to do with either mitochondrial or acetylcholine or dopamine problems, as I was saying before. The other thing that really jumped out at me here when I go through is the visual system of your brain. So we're looking here at 19, 18, and 17. Especially 18 and 19, you see here. You notice there's a lot of blue, there's a lot of disconnection in these areas. And that fits with some of the stuff we were seeing on the surface maps as well, the hypercoherence in the beta that was linking back into the occipital lobes, and as well some of the delta that was coming up on the top there, as well as the blue brain. When the brain is a little bit starved for energy, a little bit having a hard time generating ATP or generating fuel, one of the first places that always suffers is the visual system, because visual processing in the brain burns a lot of energy. And so again, you may not actually have overt visual processing symptoms, but it does look to me like your visual system is struggling a little bit. It's having a bit of a hard time. So if that doesn't show up as sensitivity to light, trouble reading for long periods of time, being overstressed by driving, you may also come out again as a slight tendency towards depression or lethargy. But again, for the most part, it's not too bad. I've seen much worse, but these are things you may want to just consider looking at. Definitely, I think the combination of CBP choline and fish oil would probably be helpful for you, especially if you're someone who doesn't dream very much. But as well, like I said before, play with things like MCT oil, ketone supplementation, PQQ, CoQ10, ribose. all that kind of stuff that helps boost mitochondrial function and energy formation. I think is going to be really, really helpful for you. And then, yeah, the other thing is maybe take a look at inflammation as well, see if there's anything else you can do to just get your immune system to calm down a little bit, because there may have been some inflammation in the surface maps like we talked about before. So that's pretty much it. Those are the most significant things I was able to find um, in your brain maps. So I hope this report is helpful for you. I hope some of the nutritional recommendations end up being useful. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to shoot me a message. I'd be happy to answer them for you. All right, take care.